Hey there everybody, welcome back to my Twitch stream. My name is Kris, this is Wizard Way, and today is another day of Silmarillion Saturday. So welcome to the stream. We're going to be reading some J.R.R. Tolkien today. Silmarillion is a beautiful, beautiful book, but it is not the easiest to read because it reads more like a history text. So because of that, I am reading it aloud so you don't have to. And I also have some voice effects that I'll be using for various characters. Pretty heavy on the voice effects in today's stream because we are covering Chapter 9, which is The Flight of the Noldor. So I'm going to be switching voices quite a lot, and hopefully I won't get them mixed up. If I do, it'll be even funnier on the Twitch stream. So everyone bear with me. But it's going to be a good stream. There are also illustrations this time, whereas last stream we didn't have any illustrations in the chapters that we covered. So today we get pictures, and that's half the fun. Also, I hope everyone likes my Thran Daddy t-shirt. Oh yay! Squeakinator, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, it's around the same time every Saturday. I try and keep things relatively consistent. I'm not the best at that, so I'm really trying. So even though I don't think my voice is ready for it yet today, my voice is super deep right now. But I'll be voicing a lot of Valar, so I guess that'll be fine. It's fine, you know, it's fine. My phone is not having it today. There we go. Oh, I'm glad you were able to catch up. Yeah, I keep trying to remind myself to post everything up on YouTube, and just my brain is scattered. But that is partially because we are getting very close to the death-iversary for my partner. My partner died on September 30th of 2019, and so the closer we get to the end of September, the more scattered my brain becomes, and it becomes much, much harder for me to stick with the plan, you know? So yeah, forgive me if I have an open chat with you or something on Instagram and have completely forgotten about you. It's just because my brain won't work for the next week. We'll be alright, though. Hey everybody over on TikTok, please head over to my Twitch stream. We're going to be reading the Silmarillion very shortly. Chapter 9. So, this is an important chapter. Chapter 9 is The Flight of the Noldor, and that is an important one, so gonna get some impassioned speeches, all sorts of good stuff today. And once again, I will show you guys my overhead cam so you guys can see that I am able to share the illustrations with you guys, which is great. So let me show you that super quickly. Here we go. It shifted. Of course it shifted. There we go. So, here is my pretty bright orange version of the Silmarillion. This is the 2020 limited edition illustrated Silm. It really is a beautiful, beautiful book. It's printed in both black and red, and the paper is nice and thick. It's such a wonderfully tactile book. But, yeah. Already covered the Anu and Dale, but we will be covering Chapter 9. So let's flip to it and get started, shall we? Okay. Alright, let me switch up my scene again. Womp womp. Just kidding. It's early. It's early. Forgive me. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoy the Elvish notes. No notes today, because I haven't prepped them. Again, brain scattered, not working. But I will be trying to catch up on all the Elvish. I do have an obscene amount of vocabulary to still go over from chapters like think it's chapters 5 and on. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then I also will have like 10, 11, and 12 for next week. It's a lot of vocabulary, and I just haven't had the time to sort it all out and actually do a stream for it. But there will be a separate stream for that. It'll be not on Saturday. It'll probably be on like Sunday or maybe a Monday. I'm trying to get into the habit of streaming multiple times a week. It's been a while, but we're getting there. Alright, so trying to mentally prepare myself because there are a lot of voice changes. A lot of voice changes in today's stream. Alright. Let's take the slippers off. There we go. Everyone say hello to my kitty. Hi, Gray. You're a good boy. Chapter 3 and on? Yeah, lots. I missed a lot. At the very least, there are 2 chapters where there were only like 4 new terms in the vocabulary. So at least one of them is light on the vocab. I think it was last week's would have been light on the vocab if I had included it. Alright, so let's compose ourselves and get ready to start. Hopefully my voice holds up, and hopefully all of these voice filters will work with me today instead of against me. But we'll see. Okay, so as a quick recap, we just had gotten through the Darkening of Valinor, which is where we talked a little bit about the area of Valinor called Avathar. Avathar is like the southern area. It's below where Valinor is, but it's on the same continent. So it's still the Hitherlands, but it's much lower. So Avathar is where basically it's just mountains. It's very mountainous, it meets the sea, but there's nothing really going on there. So the Valar tend to ignore that area. Because of that, they have completely neglected to keep track of Ungoliant, who is a Maya spirit, she's much more powerful than your typical Maya, but she takes in light, she consumes light, and spins webs of shadow. Like shadow that is palpable and sticky. Think of it like an actual web. So much like we see Shelob in the Lord of the Rings movies, weaving all those sticky webs, just think of that except like blackness. Like those webs would absorb all the light around you. That's the feel that we get from Ungoliant. Ungoliant is actually the predecessor, the ancestor of Shelob. Shelob is like a little more down the chain. But yes, they are related. They are indeed related. Shelob and all of the big spiders in Mirkwood during the Third Age are all descended from Ungoliant. So we'll be covering a bit more about Ungoliant today. She is definitely playing a part, but Melkor, being devious as he typically is, went down into Avathar and consorted with Ungoliant and was like, hey, I've got a plan. And you are gonna love this plan, because I'm going to give you so much light to consume that, like, you're gonna be so happy with me. You're gonna be so happy. And so they team up, and with her weaving shadows around the two of them, because she's a really big spider. And Melkor is currently in a form that's very much like what we see Sauron take in the Lord of the Rings prologue in the movies. So he's, tall, broad, taller than your typical elf, but not like a giant. So he takes this form, and we had a note of foreboding in the last chapter that this would be the form that he's stuck in for a while. So, bum. But he took that form. Ungoliant snuck them into Valinor. This was a time of festival for the elves, so everyone was gathered on Taniquetil, which is the highest mountain in Valinor, and over in Valmar. And while everyone's, partying over on the other part of Valinor, Ungoliant and Melkor snuck over to the two trees, and she sapped them dry. So that plunged the entirety of Valinor into darkness, and basically she killed the two trees. She wounded the two trees, and then Melkor takes a spike. He takes a staff or spear and runs them through. So the trees are now dead, which means all the land is covered in darkness. Much like Galadriel says in the prologue. But this time, it's for real. There's a reason that Galadriel saying that in the prologue makes perfect sense, because she was there. Galadriel is alive during this. So that leaves us where we currently are. Basically, Melkor and Ungoliant have now fled. And this is after they had been over to Formenos, where they have stolen the Silmarils. So they have treasures, and they have the light of the two trees within Shelob now. So she is a big, hungry spider. Super hungry spider. And that leaves us where we currently are. So let's continue on from there. And hope that I can keep up with the voice filters. Alright. I'll take one more drink of water. My throat, man. We'll try today. Alright. Chapter 9 of the Flight of the Noldor. After a time, a great concourse gathered about the Ring of Doom, and the Valar sat in shadow, for it was night. But the stars of Varda now glimmered overhead, and the air was clear, for the winds of Manway had driven away the vapors of death and rolled back the shadows of the sea. Then Yavanna arose and stood upon Azelohar, the Green Mound. But it was bare now and black, and she laid her hands upon the trees, but they were dead and dark, and each branch that she touched broke and fell lifeless at her feet. Then many voices were lifted in lamentation, and it seemed to those that mourned that they had drained to the dregs the cup of woe that Melkor had filled for them. But it was not so. Yavanna spoke before the Valar, saying,
"The light of the trees has passed away, and lives now only in the Silmarils of Feanor. Foresighted was he. Even for those who are mightiest under Iluvatar, there is some work that they may yet accomplish once, and once only. The light of the trees I brought into being, and within Ea I can do so never again. Yet had I but a little of that light, I could recall life to the trees, ere their roots decay, and then our hurt should be healed, and the malice of Melkor be confounded."
Then Manway spoke and said,
"Hearest thou, Feanor, son of Finwë, the words of Yavanna? Wilt thou grant what she would ask?"
There was a long silence, but Feanor answered no word, and then Tolkien cried,
"Speak, O Noldor, yea or nay? But who shall deny Yavanna? And did not the light of the Silmarils come from her work in the beginning?"
But Aule the Maker said,
"Be not hasty. We ask a greater thing than thou knowest. Let him have peace yet a while."
But Feanor spoke then and cried bitterly,
"For the less even as for the greater,
there is some deed that he may accomplish but once only. And in that deed his heart shall rest. It may be that I can unlock my jewels, but never again shall I make their like. And if I must break them, I shall break my heart, and I shall be slain. First of all, the Eldar in Aman. Not the first,
said Mandos. But they did not understand his word, and again there was silence, while Feanor brooded in the dark. It seemed to him that he was beset in a ring of enemies, and then the words of Melkor returned to him, saying that the Silmarils were not safe if the Valar would possess them.
And is he not Valar, as are they?
Said his thought.
And does he not understand their hearts? Yea, a thief shall reveal thieves.
And then he cried aloud,
This thing I will not do of free will, but if the Valar will constrain me, then shall I know indeed that Melkor is of their kindred.
And then Mandos said,
Thou hast spoken.
And Nienna rose and went up into... Oh, pardon me. And Nienna rose and went up onto Azelohar, and cast back her grey hood, and with her tears washed away the defilements of Ungoliant. And she sang in mourning for the bitterness of the world and the marring of Arda. But even as the... Sorry, guys. But even as Nienna mourned, there came messengers from Formenos, and they were Noldor, and bore new tidings of evil. For they told how a blind darkness came northward, and in the midst walked some power for which there was no name, and the darkness issued from it. But Melkor also was there, and he came to the house of Feanor, and there he slew Finwë, king of the Noldor, before his doors, and spilled the first blood in the Blessed Realm. For Finwë alone had not fled from the horror of the dark. And they told that Melkor had broken the stronghold of Formenos, and taken all the jewels of the Noldor that were hoarded in that place, and the Silmarils were gone. Then Feanor rose, and lifting up his hand before Manwë, he cursed Melkor, naming him Morgoth, the black foe of the world. And by that name only was he known to the Eldar ever after. And he cursed also the summons of Manwë and the hour in which he came to Taniquetil, thinking in the madness of his rage and grief that, had he been at Formenos, his strength would have availed more than to be slain also, as Melkor had proposed. Then Feanor ran from the Ring of Doom and fled into the night, for his father was dearer to him than the light of Valinor, or the peerless works of his hands. And who among sons of elves or of men have held their fathers of greater worth? We can pause there for a moment. I see that hydration. That hydration call. Okay, more hydration. I'm not going to deny you. I won't deny you like Feanor denied the Valar. So, to summarize, basically, they see that the two trees have been sapped, and Yavanna, who originally created the two trees, has said, you know, I made these, but I'll never make their like again. Thankfully, Feanor used their light to inspire the Silmarils. The Silmarils are filled with the light of the two trees, and if I could have just a hint of that back, if I could have the Silmarils and break them, I could use their light to revive the two trees. But, even Aule is like, whoa, 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 you're asking him to destroy the greatest work he's ever created. Like, you're asking a lot of Feanor right now. So as an inventor, he understands. And Feanor basically has that niggling little thought in the back of his mind where he's thinking about Melkor, and he's like, you know, Melkor is a Vala too. And he said that the Silmarils would not be safe. And, like, they're of the same kin, right? So if Melkor is evil, then the other Valar have just as much potential to be evil. And so he decides to not give up the Silmarils. And in that, condemns Valinor into darkness. So he's being a bit selfish, but you can still understand. But then he gets even more upset because then the people from Formenos, the messengers, come in and they inform him that, number one, his father is dead, and number two, the Silmarils are gone. So effectively that takes away his choice. And so, you know, in grief and rage, he is storming off now. And we can feel for him. Feanor's not a nice guy, but, you know, no one before Feanor had experienced their parents being killed, right? Feanor's mother gave up on life after putting so much of her life force into the creation of Feanor. And, So his mother is gone, and now Finwë is the first elf in Valinor to ever be slain. So it's not a good time for Feanor. The poor guy has a lot of trauma. Where is the meadows that I spoke of? Are you talking about the Green Mound, Azelohar? Azelohar is... it really does translate to the Green Mound, or the Mound of Evergreen. It is a mound that is sort of like northwest of Valmar, which is the city where most of the Valar dwell. That's where they at least socialize with the elves. And the two trees are sort of northwest of that. So they're not in the city of Valmar, but they're off in the distance. Still visible, but off in the distance. The Green Mound is where the two trees sprout up. So there's a big green hill, and then the two trees sprout up from the top of that, and their branches intermingle. But the waters, the dew that falls from the two trees, is then gathered in pools around the edge of that mound. So that is Azelohar. I'm hoping that's what you were talking about. So that is Azelohar, and that is where Nienna is, you know, crying for the death of the two trees. Alright, let's continue. Hey everyone over on my TikTok account, please head over to my Twitch if you can. You'll hear all of the voice effects that I'm trying to do for this stream. There's a lot of different voices for this one. But you can't hear it on TikTok, it's through my OBS, so head on over, same handle there as it is here on TikTok. Alright, let's continue. Feanor has stormed off in grief. Because he really did love his father. He might have been bitter over the death of his mother, but he really did love his father. Okay. Many there grieved for the anguish of Feanor, but his loss was not his alone, and Yavanna wept by the mound, in fear that the darkness would swallow the last rays of the light of Valinor forever. For though the Valar did not yet understand fully what had befallen, they perceived that Melkor had called upon some aid that came from beyond Arda. The Silmarils had passed away, and all one it may seem whether Feanor had said yea or nay to Yavanna. Yet had he said yea at first, before the tidings came from Formenos, it may be that his after deeds would have been other than they were. But now the doom of the Noldor drew near. Meanwhile, Morgoth, escaping from the pursuit of the Valar, came to the wastes of Ahriman. As a quick reminder, Ahriman is the area north of Valinor. Again, same continent, much like Avathar, but Avathar is the south, and Ahriman is the north. Meanwhile, Morgoth, escaping from the pursuits of the Valar, came to the wastes of Ahriman. This land lay northward between the mountains of the Pelori and the Great Sea, as Avathar lay to the south. But Ahriman was a wider land, and between the shores and the mountains were barren plains, ever colder as the ice drew nearer. Through this region, Morgoth and Ungoliant passed in haste, and so came to the great mists of Oyamure, to the Helcaraxe, where the strait between Ahriman and Middle-earth was filled with grinding ice. And he crossed over and came back at last to the north of the Outer Lands. Together they went on, for Morgoth could not elude Ungoliant. And her cloud was still about him, and all her eyes were upon him. And now they came to those lands that lay north of the Firth of Drengist. Now Morgoth was drawing near to the ruins of Angband, where his great western stronghold had been, and Ungoliant perceived his hope, and knew that here he would seek to escape from her, and she stayed him, demanding that he fulfill his promise.
Blackheart,
she said,
have I done thy bidding? I have done thy bidding, but I hunger still.
What wouldst thou have more?
said Morgoth.
Dost thou desire all the world for thy belly? I did not vow to give thee that. I am its lord.
Not so much,
said Ungoliant.
But thou hast a great treasure from Formenos, and I will have all that. Yea, with both hands thou shalt give it.
Then perforce Morgoth surrendered to her the gems that he bore with him, one by one and grudgingly. And she devoured them, and their beauty perished from the world. Huger and darker yet she grew. Let me rephrase. Huger and darker yet grew Ungoliant, but her lust was unsated.
With one hand thou givest,
she said.
With the left only. Open thy right hand.
In his right hand Morgoth held close the Silmarils, and though they were locked in a crystal casket, they had begun to burn him, and his hand was clenched in pain, but he would not open it.
Nay,
he said,
thou hast had thy due. For with my power that I put into these, thy work was accomplished. I need thee no more. These things thou shalt not have, nor see. I name them unto myself forever.
But Ungoliant had grown great, and he less by the power that had gone out of him. And she rose against him, and her cloud closed about him, and she enmeshed him in a web of clinging thongs to strangle him. Then Morgoth sent forth a terrible cry that echoed in the mountains. Therefore that region was called Lamoth, for the echoes of his voice dwelt there ever after, so that any who cried aloud in that land awoke them, and all the waste between the hills and the sea was filled with a clamor as of voices in anguish. The cry of Morgoth in that hour was the greatest and most dreadful that was ever heard in the northern world. The mountains shook, and the earth trembled, and rocks were riven asunder. Deep in forgotten places that cry was heard, far beneath the ruined halls of Angband, in vaults to which the Valar, in the haste of their assault, had not descended. Balrogs lurked still, awaiting ever the return of their lord. And now swiftly they arose, and passing over Hithlum, they came to Lamoth as a tempest of fire. With their whips of flame, they smote asunder the webs of Ungoliant, and she quailed and turned to flight, belching black vapors to cover her. And fleeing from the north, she went down into Valerian and dwelt beneath Ered Gorgoroth, in that dark valley that was after called Nan Dungortheb, the Valley of Dreadful Death, because of the horror that she bred there. For other foul creatures of spider form had dwelt there since the days of the delving of Angband, and she mated with them, and devoured them. And even after Ungoliant herself departed and went thither, and went whither she would, into the forgotten south of the world, her offspring abode there and wove their hideous webs. Of the fate of Ungoliant no tale tells, yet some have said that she ended long ago, when her uttermost famine she devoured herself at last. And we can pause. I love this section. You can probably tell from my voice, I love this section of the book. There's a lot of action. So, that's Ungoliant. She doesn't appear for very long in the book, but she certainly has a great effect. Even Morgoth was scared of Ungoliant. Because honestly, had he not cried out and been aided by the Balrogs, Ungoliant probably could have, defeated him in that moment, because his power was lessened from all of the things that he had done. So with his power sort of not at its peak, Ungoliant could probably have overtaken him. Not destroyed him, because all these godlike creatures cannot actually be destroyed. Not in the truest sense, but she could have taken that form of his easily. She would have eaten him. And instead she went down into the south and bred with the other big spiders that were in the forest there, and then she eats those instead. So Ungoliant is almost a metaphor in some ways for gluttony. That she's, cursed with this great hunger, this hunger that can never be satisfied. And that's why sort of, in the legends, it says that in her great hunger, she eventually just consumed herself. And that was the end of her. Don't ask me how that actually physically is possible, but the concept is echoed in different histories, right? So Ungoliant is gone, and I know that there were several place names there that were unfamiliar. Let's recount them really quickly. So Lamoth is a region that's all about echoing voices. So whenever people shout or whenever there's a clamor of battle, it wakes the echoes of Melkor's cry. So that's kind of cool. Angband we've heard before. That was Sauron's stronghold in the northern part of Middle-earth, or Valerian specifically. Let's see. Hithlum is an area. Let me grab my map, which I don't have in front of me. Of course I don't. Let me grab my map really quickly, and I will show you guys where these places are on the map. So let me change my scene up, and we'll show you that. Oh yeah, this is going to be helpful. Okay. This map is definitely going to help. It'll help everyone visualize what we're talking about here. Okay. Let me shift things around a little bit. Alright. So here is the map of Valerian. And so to the north here, at the very, very top, it's not even visible on this particular map. To the north here would be where Angband is, because there's a big encircling mountain range up here that sort of connects to the Ered Luin, the Blue Mountains, over here on the east coast of Valerian. I say east coast, just the eastern border of Valerian. There's no water there. But to the north are, more mountains, and that's where Angband is. The biggest mountain in Angband is Thangorodrim. Again, I realize this is a lot of vocabulary, and I don't have the breakdown of what all of the etymology is today, but I can at least show you on the map. So, when Melkor makes his great cry, he does that over here in Lamoth, the Lamoth area. So that's Ered Lomin is the mountain range there, and this is the Firth of Drengist, which was also mentioned. The Firth being an inlet of a body of water. But unlike a bay, which would be more like down here. This is the Bay of Valar, down south. So up at the top here in Lamoth is where Melkor makes his great cry, Morgoth, because from now on we will mostly be referring to him as Morgoth, not Melkor, but it is the same character. So he makes his big cry here, and basically all of these mountains here, between here and the sea, will echo his voice. And this does happen a couple different times as we continue through the book. So he has his confrontation with Shelob here. Shelob then flees down through these mountains and over to Ered Gorgoroth. It's not an easy one to say. And I think they said Dungorfeb as well, which is an area here. Non-Dungorfeb. Let me zoom in. You guys will be able to see it. There we go. So here you can actually read it. So here is Ered Gorgoroth, and Nan Dungorfeb. Nan is usually used for forests, so it is generally forested here. It's just not as densely forested as Doriath when you get into the forest of Neldoreth. And Nan Elmoth is where we remember that Elwë got lost in that forest and met Melian, and they stayed there, staring at each other for decades. They were lost, and then they finally break out of their trance, and everyone's okay. But they are the ones who then settled Doriath and became the rulers there. So Nan Dungorfeb is always this constant presence, this darkness that stays at the northern border of Doriath. So there's always a bit of a threat there. And Ered Gorgoroth is where Ungoliant then goes and breeds with a bunch of other spiders. And so this mountain range is pretty dangerous, just because there are a lot of beasties there. So don't push it, okay? But that at least gives you guys a better visual idea of where we are talking about. So this upper border, where we have the Firth of Drengist, that continues northern, and then sort of there is that mountain range that then becomes part of Angband. But if you follow the sea, just the sea, it takes you up over the Helcaraxe and then down into Ahriman. And I'm glad that they actually did specify that Ahriman is much like Avathar, except it's north. So Ahriman, then you have Valmar, or Valinor, and then underneath that is Avathar, just so people don't get too confused with the terms. But there we go. So hopefully that helps visually anyone who is struggling to keep up with some of the names. So we just talked about Shelob coming down through here and settling down here. Now, after she breeds, she goes even further south. She probably ends up down in the mountain ranges of Mordor, actually. That would make perfect sense, because where would Shelob come from, right? She is also descended from Ungoliant, and Ungoliant probably went down there, bred with more spiders, and the legends say that she's lost, that she consumed herself, and that's the end of her. All right. Shall we continue? I need to remember to keep that map close, because it's definitely going to come in handy. Okay. Alright, here we go. And thus the fear of Yavanna that the Silmarils would be swallowed up and fall into nothingness did not come to pass, but they remained in the power of Morgoth. And he, being freed, gathered again all his servants that he could find, and came to the ruins of Angband. There he delved anew his vast vaults and dungeons, and above their gates he reared the threefold peaks of Thangorodrim. And the great reek of dark smoke was ever wreathed about them. There countless became the hosts of his beasts and his demons, and he and the race of orcs, bred long before, grew and multiplied in the bowels of the earth. Dark now fell the shadow on Valerian, as is told hereafter. But in Angband, Morgoth forged for himself a great crown of iron, and he called himself King of the World. In token of this, he set the Silmarils in his crown. His hands were burned black by the touch of those hallowed jewels, and black they remained ever after. Nor was he ever free from the pain of the burning, and the anger of that pain. That crown he never took from his head, though its weight became a deadly weariness. Never but once only did he depart for a while secretly from his domain in the north. Seldom indeed did he leave the deep places of his fortress, but governed his armies from his northern throne. And once only also did he himself wield weapon while his realm lasted. For now, more than in the days of Autumno, ere his pride was humbled, his hatred devoured him, and in the domination of his servants and in the inspiring of them with lust of evil, he spent his spirit. Nonetheless, his majesty as one of the Valar long remained, though turned to terror. And before his face, all save the mightiest sank into a dark pit of fear. And there is a break in the chapter. Fun fact. Your dad told you that he named you after a Silmarillion character, but he spelled it wrong? How funny. Which character? I'm curious now. And you can just name the character and not name your actual name. Iron? Iron. I don't remember an iron. I could be wrong. I'm like, that's what the index is for. Oh, maybe Eileen, with an L instead of an R. Because Eileen is a lake or pool. Sorry, I get easily distracted by all the etymology. She burned in a fire, saving people. Oh, might have been mortal then. There was like the people of Halath, were a mighty folk of men, the house of Halath and Haldur. I remember reading about them, so Eileen might have made an appearance there. Eileen. Thank you, though, and congrats. I certainly can't boast of having a name that was taken from the Silmarillion. My parents are not that geeky, unfortunately. Not when it comes to fiction. My dad loves trains. I'm lucky I didn't end up with a name that has something to do with railroads. No, instead I got, Christina. And I'm like, ew. Even that was a compromise, though. For a very long time, my parents and my sister were all told that I was going to be a boy. Joke's on them, because I'm non-binary. But during that period, my sister didn't want me to be named what my parents had planned, which was Doug. I was gonna be Doug. Nothing against people named Doug, but that does not feel like me at all. So instead of Doug, my sister, who was 4 at the time, 3 and 4, insisted that I be named Christopher Robin, after Winnie the Pooh. Because my sister loved Winnie the Pooh, so she wanted a little brother named Christopher Robin. And when it turned out that I was a girl, and my parents hadn't really planned for that, they were like, okay, we'll compromise. We'll name the kid Christina. And I've gone by Kris for a long time, ever since after high school. Never really cared for Christina. So, nothing super engaging about my name. Believer in Christ, okay. Along with everyone else that's named Chris, Christopher, Christoph, Christina, Christine, Kristen. All of the above. Oh, thank you so much for the follow, Casey. Recently got the book, but you haven't read it yet. Yeah, small role. Yeah, very small. Is small. That's okay. There are a lot of characters in the Silmarillion that have, one mention, and then they're gone forever. Maybe 2 mentions if you're lucky. Your name means Ireland. Oh, yeah, right, of course. Why did that not connect in my brain? I should know these things. I was trying to think of the song lyrics. It's from Dulaman. Dulaman na bindabui, Dulaman gailach, Dulaman da farige faravirin erin. Yeah, erin. I know a little bit. Though that's the Celtic woman version of Dulaman. The other version is much more rhythmic and faster. Because they tend to go Dulaman, 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 na binnabui, Dulaman, da binnabui, yella, Dulaman, 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 na farige, Dulaman, na binnabui, yella. Yeah. I enjoy Celtic stuff. If you couldn't tell, I really enjoy Celtic music. I don't know Gaelic, but I pretend. Alright, let's continue, shall we? Alright. Just checking ahead, so I know what I need to expect with my voice stuff. Alright, let's continue. Now when it was known that Morgoth had escaped from Valinor and pursuit was unavailing, the Valar remained long seated in darkness in the Ring of Doom, and the Maiar and the Vanyar stood beside them and wept. But the Noldor, for the most part, returned to Tirion and mourned for the darkening of their fair city. Through the dim ravine of the Kalakiria, fogs drifted in from the shadowy seas and mantled its towers, and the lamp of the Mindon burned pale in the gloom. Then suddenly Feanor appeared in the city and called on all to come to the high court of the king upon the summit of Tuna. But But the doom of banishment that had been laid upon him was not yet lifted, and he rebelled against the Valar. A great multitude gathered there swiftly, therefore, to hear what he would say. And the hill and all the stairs and streets that climbed upon it were lit with the light of many torches that each one bore in hand. Feanor was a master of words, and his tongue had great power over hearts when he would use it. And that night he made a speech before the Noldor which they ever remembered. Fierce and fell were his words, and filled with anger and pride. And hearing them, the Noldor were stirred to madness. His wrath and his hate were given most to Morgoth, and yet well nigh all that he said came from the very lies of Morgoth himself. But he was distraught with grief for the slaying of his father, and with anguish for the rape of the Silmarils. He claimed now the kingship of all the Noldor, since Finwë was dead, and he scorned the decrees of the Valar.
Why, O people of the Noldor?
He cried.
Why should we longer serve the jealous Valar, who cannot keep us nor even their own realm secure from their enemy? And though he be now their foe, are not they and he of one kin? Vengeance calls me hence, but even were it otherwise, I would not dwell longer in the same land with the kin of my father's slayer, and of the thief of my treasure. Yet I am not the only valiant in this valiant people, and have ye not all lost your king? And what else have ye not lost, cooped here in the narrow land between the mountain and the sea? Here once was light, that the Valar begrudged to Middle-earth, but now dark levels all. Shall we mourn here deedless forever, a shadowfolk, mist-haunting, dropping vain tears in the thankless sea? Or shall we return to our home? In Quivien and sweet ran the waters under unclouded stars, and wide lands lay about, where a free people might walk. There they lie still, and await us who in our folly forsook them. Come away, let the cowards keep this city.
Long he spoke, and ever he urged the Noldor to follow him, and by their own prowess to win freedom and great realms in the lands of the east, before it was too late. For he echoed the lies of Melkor, that the Valar had cozened them and would hold them captive, so that men might rule in Middle-earth. Many of the Eldar heard then for the first time of the aftercomers.
Fair shall the end be,
he cried.
Though long and hard shall be the road. Say farewell to bondage, but say farewell also to ease. Say farewell to the weak. Say farewell to your treasures. More still shall we make. Journey light, but bring with you your swords. For we will go further than Orome, endure longer than Tolkos. We will never turn back from pursuit. After Morgoth to the ends of the earth. War shall he have, and hatred undying. But when we have conquered and we have regained the Silmarils, then we and we alone shall be lords of the unsullied light, and masters of the bliss and beauty of Arda. No other race shall oust us.
Then Feanor swore a terrible oath. His 7 sons leapt straightway to his side and took the selfsame vow together, and red as blood shone their drawn swords in the glare of the torches. They swore an oath which none shall break, and none should take, by the name even of Iluvatar, calling the everlasting dark upon them, if they kept it not. And Manway they named in witness, and Varda, and the hallowed mountain of Taniquetil, vowing to pursue with vengeance and hatred to the ends of the world, Vala, demon, elf, or man, as yet unborn, or any creature, great or small, good or evil, that time should bring forth unto the end of days, whoso should hold or take or keep the Silmaril from their possession. I'll pause there for a moment because that oath is a bit long-winded, but it basically is saying that no matter what creature we're talking about here, elf, vala, man, any sort of creature, it could be some beast, it could be a Balrog, it does not matter. Whomever, good or evil, might keep a Silmaril from them, like, woe be upon those people. Because they are going to have very angry Feanorians coming after them. So that is the oath that was taken. And that is often referred to as the oath, like capital O oath, the oath. So all of Feanor's sons leapt to follow him in this dreadful oath, and they all took it straight away together. I'm sure Nerdanel was pissed. Feanor's wife, the mother of these 7 sons, was probably so angry. No one consulted her on this, because Nerdanel was known as Nerdanel the Wise. She probably would have been like, whoa, guys, slow down before you say something or do something that you're going to regret. She would have tried to rein them in. I don't know that she would have succeeded, but she would have tried if she'd been given half the chance. She's probably like, no, this is getting bad so quickly, this is escalating so fast. But that is unfortunately what happens. Everyone gets stirred to anger, and Feanor spouts off all of the lies that Melkor had sort of sown in him and made him think were like his own thoughts, but it totally came from Melkor. Yeah, Nerdanel gave a condescending look to them all. Basically, Nerdanel is so over this. I did a video on TikTok about the age of Nerdanel. By the time the Silmarils are being like forged and then all of this goes down, like, she is well into her adulthood. She's been around a while, and she had 6 pregnancies, 7 children total, by Feanor. And Feanor really didn't tend to listen to her. It even said in one of the chapters in the Silmarillion that he took counsel from no one, save briefly from Nerdanel. Like, but infrequently. So he doesn't listen to anyone. No one can tell Feanor what he can and cannot do, including Nerdanel. She might counsel him occasionally, but he rarely listens to her. Men. But no, Nerdanel would be so over it. She would be so over all of this. But we do know, I'm not sure if it's stated in the Silmar, if it's supplemental texts, but it does say that Nerdanel grieves for the loss of her children. That in their anger, they swore this oath and then had to keep it. And were taken from her. She didn't have a say in this. She didn't have a chance to talk them down or be like, hey, maybe you want to think about this. Do you really want to follow your father? If you do, then okay. Like, I don't think she would have stopped them if they really wanted to pursue this, but she would have at least tried to talk them out of it. And she probably would have managed to persuade at least 3 of them. At least 3 of the 7. And the 3 that I think would have heeded her would have been Maglor, who was the most hesitant to draw his sword in this case and swear the oath. He was the last of the 7 to do so. He hesitated. But he's a bard. He didn't want to be a warrior. He just felt the pressure from the rest of his family to do so. So I think Maglor would have been persuaded to stay, and probably Amrod and Amros, the 2 youngest. Because while they loved hunting, they were not really warriors so much. but their temperament was said to be more closer to Nerdinel. So I think those three at least, and maybe Maedhros, but I think Maedhros, being Feanor's eldest, probably wouldn't have turned away from his father. He would have felt a lot of familial pressure, being the eldest, to follow wherever his father led. Yeah, all 7 of you? Really, guys? Yeah, basically. Poor Nerdinel. She goes through so much, and she gets nothing out of it. Like, she births these sons, and then all of them are taken away from her, and they all die grisly deaths. Yay. Except for Maglor. Spoiler alert. But, I mean, you can assume that almost every character in this book is going to die. Almost. Except for names that you've heard before from Lord of the Rings. So if you hear about Elrond or Galadriel, obviously they managed to live to the Third Age, but the vast majority of the characters in this book are doomed. Doomed from the get-go. Because of this oath, specifically. See how I brought it all back? Alright, let's continue. The wording was very convoluted, but it could be a Vala, a demon, an elf, or a man as yet unborn, or any creature, great or small. Good or evil. Anything. Anyone that would try to hold, take, or keep a Silmaril from them. They would chase them to the ends of the earth. Let's continue. Thus spoke Maedhros and Maglor and Celegorm, Curufin and Caranthir, Amrod and Amras, princes of the Noldor. And many quailed to hear the dread words, for so sworn, good or evil, an oath may not be broken, and it shall pursue Oathkeeper and Oathbreaker to the world's end. Fingolfin and Turgon his son therefore spoke against Feanor, and fierce words awoke, so that once again wrath came near to the edge of swords. But Finarfin spoke softly, as was his wont, and sought to calm the Noldor, persuading them to pause and ponder ere deeds were done that could not be undone. And Orodreth alone of his sons spoke in like manner. Finrod was with Turgon, his friend, but Galadriel, the only woman of the Noldor to stand that day tall and valiant among the contending princes, was eager to be gone. No oaths she swore, but the words of Feanor concerning Middle-earth had kindled in her heart, for she yearned to see the wide, unguarded lands and to rule there a realm at her own will. Of like mind with Galadriel was Fingon, Fingolfin's son, being moved also by Feanor's words, though he loved him little. And with Fingon stood as they ever did Angrod and Aegnor, sons of Finarfin. But these held their peace and spoke not against their fathers. At length, after long debate, Feanor prevailed, and the greater part of the Noldor there assembled he set aflame with the desire of new things and strange countries. Therefore, when Finarfin spoke yet again for heed and delay, a great shout went up.
Nay, let us be gone.
And straightway Feanor and his sons began to prepare for the marching forth. Little foresight could there be for those who dared to take so dark a road, yet all was done in overhaste, for Feanor drove them on, fearing lest in the cooling of their hearts his words should wane, and other counsels yet prevail. And for all his proud words, he did not forget the power of the Valar. But from Valmar came no message, and Manway was silent. He would not yet either forbid nor hinder Feanor's purpose, for the Valar were aggrieved that they were charged with evil intent to the Eldar, or that any were held captive by them against their will. Now they watched and waited, for they did not yet believe that Feanor could hold the host of the Noldor to his will. And indeed, when Feanor began the marshalling of the Noldor for their setting out, then at once dissension arose. For though he had brought the assembly in a mind to depart, by no means all were of a mind to take Feanor as king. Greater love was given to Fingolfin and his sons, and his household and the most part of the dwellers in Tirion refused to renounce him, if he would go with them. And thus at last, as two divided hosts, the Noldor set forth upon their bitter road. Feanor and his following were in the van, but the greater host came behind under Fingolfin, and he marched against his wisdom, because Fingon, his son, so urged him, and because he would not be sundered from his people that were eager to go, nor leave them to the rash counsels of Feanor. Nor did he forget his words before the throne of Manway. With Fingolfin went Finarfin also, and for like reasons, but most loath he was to depart. And of all the Noldor in Valinor, who were grown now to a great people, but one tithe refused to take the road, some for the love that they bore to the Valar, and to Aule not least, some for the love of Tirion and the many things that they had made, but none for the peril of the way. But none for fear of peril of the way. But even as the trumpets sang and Feanor issued from the gates of Tirion, a messenger came at last from Manway, saying, pardon me, dropping my book. Let's try that again, shall we? This is what happens. Where was I? But even as the trumpet sang and Feanor issued from the gates of Tirion, a messenger came at last from Manway, saying,
Against the folly of Feanor shall be set my counsel only. Go not forth, for the hour is evil, and your road leads to sorrow that ye do not foresee. No aid will the Valar lend you in this quest, but neither will they hinder you. For this ye shall know. As ye came hither freely, freely shall ye depart. But thou, Feanor, Finway's son, by thine oath art expelled. But thou, Feanor, Finway's son, by thine oath art exiled. The lies of Melkor thou shalt unlearn in bitterness. Vala he is, thou sayest. Then thou hast sworn in vain, for none of the Valar canst thou overcome now or ever within the halls of Ea, not through Eru, whom thou namest and made thee thrice greater than thou art.
Good lord, the language there is hard to read. And I did use the incorrect voice there. This is the Herald of Manway, so it would be Eonwë who is saying this. So he's basically saying, don't do this. You're going to learn the hard way that Melkor is not counted amongst Valar. That he's filled with lies and we have not done that to you. But Feanor, of the entire host, for everything he's said and done, is now exiled.
Oh no, whatever will he do?
Alright. But Feanor laughed, and spoke not to the herald, but to the Noldor, saying,
So, then will this valiant people send forth the heir of their king alone into banishment with his sons only, and return to their bondage? But if any will come with me, I say to them, is sorrow foreboded to you? But in Aman we have seen it. In Aman we have come through bliss to woe. The other now we will try, through sorrow to find joy, or freedom at the least.
Then, turning to the herald, he cried,
Say this to Manwë Sulimo,
High King of Arda, if Feanor cannot overthrow Morgoth, at least he delays not to assail him, and sits not idle in grief. And it may be that Eru has set in me a fire greater than thou knowest. Such hurt, at the least, will I do to the foe of the Valar, that even the mighty in the Ring of Doom shall wonder to hear it. Yea, in the end, they shall follow me. Farewell.
In that hour the voice of Feanor grew so great and so potent that even the Herald of the Valar bowed before him as one full answered, and departed, and the Noldor were overruled. Therefore they continued their march, and the house of Feanor hastened before them along the coasts of Elendil. Not once did they turn their eyes back to Tirion on the green hill of Túr. Slower and less eagerly came the host of Fingolfin after them. Of those, Fingon was the foremost, but at the rear went Finarfin and Finrod, and many of the noblest and wisest of the Noldor. And often they looked behind them to see their fair city, until the lamp of the Mindon Eldalieva, and often they looked behind them to see their fair city, until the lamp of the Mindon Eldalieva was lost in the night. More than any others of the exiles, they carried thence memories of the bliss they had forsaken, and some even of the things that they had made there they took with them, a solace and a burden on the road. And there's another pause. This is a longer chapter, which is why we're only doing chapter 9 today. Hopefully my voice effects worked through that section, because that's a tough one. There's a lot of speaking of different peoples. Feanor is a very passionate guy. And we do feel for him, to a certain extent. But he's also really foolish. Really foolish. Hey Mags, welcome. Please head over to my Twitch channel. Feanor has just taken the oath and persuaded everyone to depart. And it's a rare thing for the Herald of Manway to actually bow and be like, okay, that's your answer. I'm not gonna even try. Hey Mags, welcome! Welcome. Here comes the Mags. Hello Mags, welcome. Alright. So everyone is departing, but there's a bit of a hierarchy of who's actually willing to go. The Feanorians are like right at the front. They're like, let's do this. Let's get out of here. Let's pursue Morgoth and kick his ass. We're gonna kick his ass! They're super determined. Behind them are the host of Fingolfin. Fingolfin is better loved by the Noldor. And he mentions that he remembers his words at the throne of the Valar, at the throne of Manway. What that was referring back to was that moment where he basically tells Feanor, like, let there not be anything else that divides our houses. Where you go, I will follow. Where you lead, I will follow. And so he remembered these words. Once Feanor speaks this oath, he's like, oh no, oh no. Now I have to follow through. Now I have to actually follow him. This is not good. Like, this is not something that he would have advised at all. But he had promised, basically, where you go, I will follow. His son Fingon, Fingolfin's eldest son Fingon, is eager to go. He's stirred to passion by Feanor, number one, even though he really doesn't like him. So there's that. But also, Fingon is like best friends with Maedhros, the eldest son of Feanor. The two of them are super close, which is the source of a lot of fan fiction, even though they are cousins. But who cares, because everyone's cousins in Tolkien's world. Oh, thank you so much, Mags. I appreciate that. Yeah, if anyone is still watching over on TikTok, please tippity-tap the screen until the little icon fills up to the top of the screen. If you fill that up, it helps me appear more readily on the FYP for people who follow me, so do that if you can. I appreciate it. Likes are helpful. I appreciate you guys. So, Fingolfin does follow Feanor in this case, but he really, he's not thinking it's the best thing, but at the same time, he's like, I know my half-brother. And, like, this is the perfect example of how hot-headed he is, and how ill-prepared he is to lead, certainly in his grief. Because, for Feanor, grief is just another form of passion, and it fuels his anger. And it fuels him to action, where it would have been better if he had just taken some time to process the loss, and then come up with a plan and then execute. So, yeah. Knowing Feanor is this kind of guy, Fingolfin is like, I don't want to leave the host in your hands. Don't quite trust you to do the best for the entirety of the Noldor. So that is part of his motivation for following as well, to temper the greater rages of Feanor's, so that hopefully the entirety of the Noldor won't pay for Feanor's mistakes. Unfortunately, it doesn't turn out that way. But let us continue. It's not a good time. Not a good time for anybody right now. Now Feanor led the Noldor northward, because his first purpose was to follow Morgoth. Moreover, Tuna beneath Taniquetil was set nigh to the girdle of Arda, and there the great sea was immeasurably wide, whereas ever northward the sundering seas grew narrower, as the wasteland of Ahriman and the coasts of Middle-earth drew together. But as the mind of Feanor cooled and took counsel, he perceived overlate that all these great companies would never overcome the long leagues to the north, nor cross the seas at the last, save with the aid of ships. Yet it would need long time and toil to build so great a fleet, even were there any among the Noldor skilled in that craft. He resolved now, therefore, to persuade the Teleri, ever friends to the Noldor, to join with them. And in his rebellion he thought that... pardon me, let's try that again. He resolved now to persuade the Teleri, ever friends to the Noldor, to join with them. And in his rebellion he thought that thus the bliss of Valinor might be further diminished, and his power for war upon Morgoth be increased. He hastened then to Alqualonde, and spoke to the Teleri as he had spoken before in Tirion. But the Teleri were unmoved by aught that he would say. They were grieved indeed at the going of their kinsfolk and long friends, but would rather dissuade them than aid them, and no ship would they lend, nor help in the building against the will of the Valar. As for themselves, they desired now no other home but the strands of Eldamar, and no other lord than Olwe, Prince of Alqualonde. And he had never lent an ear to Morgoth, nor welcomed him to his land, and he trusted still that Ulmo and the other great among the Valar would redress the hurts of Morgoth, and that the night would pass yet to a new dawn. But Feanor grew wrathful, for he still feared delay, and hotly he spoke to Olwe.
You renounce your friendship even in the hour of our need,
he said.
Yet you were glad indeed to receive our aid when you came at last to these shores, faint-hearted loiterers, and well-nigh empty-handed. In huts on the beaches would you still be dwelling, had not the Noldor carved out your haven and toiled upon your walls.
But Olwe answered,
We renounce no friendship, but it may be the part of a friend to rebuke a friend's folly. And when the Noldor welcomed us and gave us aid, otherwise than you spoke, in the land of Aman we were to dwell forever, as brothers whose houses stand side by side. But as for our white ships, those you gave us not. We learned not that craft from the Noldor, but from the lords of the sea. And the white timbers we wrought with our own hands, and the white sails were woven by our wives and our daughters. Therefore we will neither give them nor sell them for any league or friendship. For I say to you, Feanor, son of Finwë, these are to us as are the gems of the Noldor, the work of our hearts, whose like we shall not make again.
Therefore Feanor left him, and sat in dark thought upon the walls of Alcolonde until his host was assembled. When he judged that his strength was enough, he went to the haven of the swans, and began to man the ships that were anchored there, and to take them away by force. But the Teleri withstood him, and cast many of the Noldor into the sea. Then swords were drawn, and a bitter fight was fought upon the ships, and about the lamplit quays and piers of the haven, and even upon the great arch of its gate. Thrice the people of Feanor were driven back, and many were slain upon either side, but the vanguard of the Noldor were succored by Feanor, with the foremost of the host of Fingolfin, who coming up found a battle joined, and their own kin falling, and rushed in before they knew rightly the cause of the quarrel. Some thought indeed that the Teleri had sought to waylay the march of the Noldor at the bidding of the Valar. Thus at last the Teleri were overcome, and a great part of their mariners that dwelt in Alcolonde were wickedly slain. For the Noldor were become fierce and desperate, and the Teleri had less strength, and were armed for the most part with but slender bows. Then the Noldor drew away their white ships, and manned their oars as best they might, and rowed them north along the coast. And Olwe called upon Alse, but he came not, for it was not permitted by the Valar that the flight of the Noldor should be hindered by force. But Uinen wept for the mariners of the Teleri, and the sea rose in wrath against the slayers, so that many of the ships were wrecked, and those in them drowned. Of the kinslaying at Alcolonde more is told in the lament which is named Noldolante, the fall of the Noldor, that Maglor made ere he was lost. And we can pause there for a moment. So that is the recounting of the kinslaying, which is not so good. And it's telling that, Feanor has several chances, he has several opportunities at this point to take a pause, consider his options, and every single time he considers his options and is like, I need to move fast before my host thinks better of this. Like, he knows this is not the best thing to be doing. Part of him viscerally understands that this is probably not the best course of action for his people, but it's the best course of action for him. And because he cannot defeat Morgoth alone, he has to find a way to make the host follow him. And so whenever they're starting to slow down or they meet some sort of roadblock, he tries to barrel past it, because he's like, the longer we wait, the more likely it is that they're going to leave me. And certainly in his grief, that would seem devastating to him. He's lost his mother, he's lost his father now, and he's lost the greatest work he's ever created, the Silmarils. With all that loss, the last thing that he wants is to lose the goodwill of his people. So he's like, I have this voice, I'm going to use it. I'm going to make them just as passionate about this as I am, so that I won't feel so alone. And yeah, that's why the host not following Feanor is inconceivable to him. Because I don't think he could process that kind of what he would deem betrayal and grief. He's already in a bad state, but you make him lose this sort of battle of popularity with his people. If he lost, I don't think there'd be much coming back from that. So, I do feel for Feanor, but he knows that what he's doing is probably not the best thing to do, but at this point, he's exiled. So he's like, well, I'm going, and I'm certainly not going alone. So who's with me? And so he's like, well, we need ships. We need ships, and Olway's like, no. How about no? Because this is dumb. And I know you're hurting right now, but we're friends, and it's my job to pull you back and, you know, give your face a bit of a slap and remind you that this is not the state that you're going to be in forever. But Feanor doesn't react well to that. He never does. And so he takes the ships by force, and unfortunately, then you get the other part of the Noldoran force, Fingolfin's people, come up, you know, at the rear, and they just see a battle going on. They don't know what's happening. They don't know why this has happened. But they see their kin. They see the other Noldor falling at the hands of the Teleri, and they freak out and join the fight. They're like, well, if there's a fight, at least we're gonna win it. We're in it to win it. Which is totally a Noldoran thing. If they're involved, they want to win. They're very competitive. And so they end up helping the Feanorian force without knowing the reason why the fight had broken out to begin with. So a lot of the Teleri are slain. And the ships are taken. Which is not so good. But what you gonna do? So I'll say, because Alsay and Uinen are both referenced here, just in case you don't remember who those are two of the Maiar, so same level as Sauron, or Gandalf, same level of heavenly being. They are Maiar, specifically under the rule of Ulmo, who is the Vala of the seas. So the Teleri, being the seafaring elves, are very close to Ulmo and very close to Alsay and Uinen. Alsay is typically found along the shores, and he likes making sea storms, tempests. So they call to him to try and, you know, ask him for aid when their ships are being stolen, but Ulmo shuts that down and says, no, you can't hinder them. You cannot hinder the Noldor from leaving. If they want to leave, they have to be able to leave. But Uinen, for once, Uinen's usually the calming force. She's usually the one to calm Alsay down from his temper tantrums and from creating storms needlessly. She's usually the savior of the mariners, right? She'll calm down the seas and keep them safe. In this case, she gets angry. For once, she loses her cool, and she makes sure that several of the ships are damaged, so that they can't be used for this. So, she makes the waves a little bit more profound than they should have been. Which is just as bad as making the sea storm. Several of the Noldor ships were lost at this point, or the Telerian ships that held the Noldor were lost, and a lot of elves drowned. Which I suppose is just considered an extension of the kinslaying. Here's your consequences. Alright. And it does mention the Noldolante, which is basically an epic poem talking about the fall of the Noldor, of which the kinslayings would definitely take a big part. They would play a big role. I imagine Maglor was just horrified by all of this. And I think in sort of the quiet moments after the kinslaying, like in the shock of it all, because you gotta think, all of the Sons of Feanor were right there at the front lines, right? They were hacking away trying to take over these ships and take them by force. And so the sons were probably split up on different boats trying to command the forces, right? And I can just visualize Maglor after the ships have set sail, where they think, okay, we're pretty much safe at this point. Having that lull in the action and finally feeling the reality of being a kinslayer starting to set in. Oh my god. Like, I understand why we did what we just did, but we just did that. We just did that. And this is bad. What? Yeah, no. Trolls. Bye. I'm like, what are these comments on my stream? Bye. Nope. But I can imagine Maglor just having that shock take hold and worrying. The repercussions of this are going to be worse than any of us could imagine. And like, it was bad enough to lose my grandfather, Finwë, because Finwë was killed by Morgoth. It's bad enough to lose my grandfather, but now I've just killed other people whom I loved. Because they wouldn't give me the ships. They wouldn't give us the ships. And what have I done? I feel like that moment would weigh so heavily upon Maglor. And he's the one who then wrote the Noldorlante. The songs about the kinslaying and the fall of the Noldor. And basically just the fall from grace, the folly of the Noldor in that moment. So, we feel bad. We feel bad for Maglor, we feel bad for the Sons of Feanor, but at the same time, ultimately we feel worse for the Teleri, because they did not deserve this. So they lose a huge chunk of their people, and they lose their ships. And much like Feanor, Feanor basically paid it forward in a bad way. Silmarils were taken from him, and so he took basically the equivalent of the Silmarils from the Teleri. It's bad. We don't like Feanor. He's a compelling character, and he's complicated, and I like that, but he's not a good guy. Not at all a good guy. Oh, Gray, you're super cute. My kitty is adorable. He's like barely down at the very bottom of my screen here. Gray? He's such a good boy. He's lazy, but I love him. Alright, shall we continue? So, there's the kinslaying. Nonetheless, the greater part of the Noldor escaped, and when the storm was past, they held on their course, some by ship and some by land. But the way was long, and ever more evil as they went forward. After they had marched for a great while in the unmeasured night, they came at last to the northern confines of the guarded realm, upon the borders of the empty waste of Ahriman, which were mountainous and cold. There they beheld suddenly a dark figure standing high upon a rock that looked down upon the shore. Some say that it was Mandos himself, and no lesser Herald of Manway. And they heard a loud voice, solemn and terrible, that bade them stand and give ear. Then all halted and stood still, and from end to end of the hosts of the Noldor the voice was heard speaking the curse and prophecy, which is called the Prophecy of the North, and the Doom of the Noldor. Much it foretold in dark words, which the Noldor understood not until the woes indeed after befell them. But all heard the curse that was uttered upon those that would not stay, nor seek the doom and pardon of the Valar.
Tears unnumbered ye shall shed, and the Valar will fence Valinor against you, and shut you out, so that not even the echo of your lamentation shall pass over the mountains. On the house of Feanor the wrath of the Valar lieth from west unto the uttermost east, and upon all that will follow him it shall be laid also. Their oath shall drive them, and yet betray them, and ever snatch away the very treasures that they have sworn to pursue. To evil end shall all things turn that they begin well, and by treason of kin unto kin, and the fear of treason, shall this come to pass. The dispossessed shall they be forever. Ye have spilled the blood of your kindred unrighteously, and have stained the land of Aman. For blood ye shall render blood, and beyond Aman ye shall dwell in death's shadow. For though Eru appointed to you to die not in air, and no sickness may assail you, yet slain ye may be, and slain ye shall be, by weapon and by torment and by grief. And your houseless spirits shall come then to Mandos. There long shall ye abide and yearn for your bodies, and find little pity, though all whom ye have slain should entreat for you. And those that endure in Middle-earth and come not to Mandos shall grow weary of the world as with great burden, and shall wane and become shadows of regret before the younger race that cometh after. The Valar have spoken.
Then many quailed, but Feanor hardened his heart, and said,
We have sworn, and not lightly. This oath we will keep. We are threatened with many evils, and treason not least. But one thing is not said, that we shall suffer from cowardice, from cravens, or the fear of cravens. Therefore I say that we will go on, and this doom I add. The deeds that we shall do shall be the matter of song until the last days of Arda.
But in that hour Finarfin forsook the march, and turned back, being filled with grief, and with bitterness against the house of Feanor, because of his kinship with Olwe of Alqualonde, and many of his people went with him, retracing their steps in sorrow, until they beheld once more the far beam of the Mindon upon Tuna, still shining in the night, and so came at last to Valinor. There they received the pardon of the Valar, and Finarfin was set to rule the remnant of the Noldor in the Blessed Realm. But his sons were not with him, for they would not forsake the sons of Fingolfin, and all Fingolfin's folk went forward still, feeling the constraint of their kinship and the will of Feanor, and fearing to face the doom of the Valar, since not all of them had been guiltless of the kinslaying at Alqualonde. Moreover, Fingon and Turgon were bold and fiery of heart, and loath to abandon any task to which they had put their hands until the bitter end, if bitter it must be. So the main host held on, and swiftly the evil that was foretold began its work. We'll pause there because we have illustrations to enjoy. Yay! Pictures! It's like the best part, right? So let me switch up my view so you guys can see the illustrations here. There we go. So here is the first illustration. We have two of them. So this is a depiction of the kinslaying at Alqualonde. And again, all of these illustrations are courtesy of Ted Nasmith. I had never seen this particular plate before. I had never seen this painting before I started reading this version of the film. It's super sad. But you just see the battle of all of the elves because they're trying to get the ships. Beautiful ships, too. And I like that we get little hints of the architecture of Alcalonde. Because Alcalonde was supposed to be very pearlescent, for lack of a better descriptor. The Noldor and the Teleri were good at finding pearls on the shores of Aman, and they integrated those into their architecture a lot. Oh, I'm glad that your dog had a play date and that it went well. That's so nice. My kitties don't mind dogs, but they don't really play. They don't really play well with dogs. My cats are too skitsy and yet, like, distant. Because, I mean, as you can see beside me, Gray is super chill. He's a very chill kitty. But he would rather be curled up and sleeping and cuddling than playing. He's not that active of a cat. I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to keep him active, but he's a lump. But he's my lump, right? So there's the first plate, and this one is vertical. So here is the second plate. So that is the host of the Noldor continuing north. We haven't quite covered the rest of the chapter where it talks about the Helcaraxe, but we're getting there. So this is foreboding for the next passage of the book. But this is the host of Fingolfin, trudging onward. So we'll revisit this in another couple minutes. I'm going to switch back. Alright, so we were just saying that Finarfin and his host went back to Valinor, and he takes the high kingship of the Noldor, at least the ones in Aman still. But his sons didn't go with him. His sons followed the sons of Fingolfin. So Fingolfin, Fingon, Torgon, Orodreth, Orodreth's daughter Finduelas, and then Finarfin's sons and daughter, which is Agnor, Aignor, Angrod, Galadriel, and Finrod Elegund. All of them for love of their cousins, basically. And some of them for pride. They don't give up tasks once they start. It's inconceivable. So pride definitely keeps a few of them from turning back. But also the true desire for realms, for land, for freedom, and the freedom to pursue ruling a realm. That is certainly Galadriel's motivation here. What Galadriel wants is a people to rule. Because in Valinor, she's, like the daughter of the third son of the king. There's no power there. And Galadriel is power hungry. And so the ideas of Feanor, even though she hates the guy, in Unfinished Tales it says they were not friends ever after. They were unfriends ever. I think it's unfriends. Like a very merry unbirthday to you. They were unfriends ever after. Feanor asked her for her hair to inspire some of his works, much like the Light of the Two Trees inspired the Silmarils. He asked for some of her hair as inspiration, and she was like, no. Nope. Not gonna happen. And he asked more than once, and he was just shut down, which is why it's so it's why it's such a big deal when Gimli gets 3 of Galadriel's hairs as a gift, because she refused to give them to Feanor. Feanor, who is like the most skilled elf who ever lived, but she hated his guts. She would rather give her hair to a dwarf than to Feanor. Ooh, burn! Hey, Secret Elves, what is up? Feel free to join over on my Twitch channel, same handle there as it is here on TikTok, but you'll be able to see the illustrations and hear any voice effects that I do on my voice. It's more fun. Highly suggest. Do I have a podcast? I do not. I used to. It was called Crystal Clear Tolkien, and I did that with my partner. That was back in 2016, 2017? Question mark? It was right as her health was starting to decline. And so we only did, I think, 8 or 9 episodes. They were about a half an hour each. I don't know that they're available anywhere. I think that they were taken off the various websites. They're probably on some hard drive somewhere. I don't remember. I do have the written transcripts for all of them, though, so if I wanted to re-record them, I could. But I don't have a podcast. I find podcasts very difficult to do alone. So, this is zero pressure on Don Marshall because he's got a full-time job and he's doing all of his TikTok stuff, and I fully respect that. But the only time that I would consider doing a podcast is if I had somebody to talk to, and my options are relatively limited. So it would have to be Dawn or New Better Do Better, maybe Ace Condor. I would love to have a podcast, but number one, I'm not the greatest at sound editing, so someone else would have to be in charge of that. And yeah, I need somebody to talk to. I can talk in an empty room. This is why I live stream. But I feel like live streaming, because it's live, you know that there is a certain amount of tangential humor that will happen. That I will go off on a tangent and eventually make my way back around to the point. Podcasts, I feel, are a little bit more structured. People aren't going to necessarily go on that journey, that live journey, where I eventually come back to the point. I feel like podcasts need to be a little bit better put together than that. But they can still be super fun and spontaneous, so it's hard to do that when you're doing everything solo. It's way easier to interact with someone and talk for an hour than it is to just talk by yourself. That and just different perspectives. I think different perspectives are like the strong point of podcasts when it comes to geek-related content. Having 2 people chat with each other when they have different inputs on a topic is far more interesting and engaging to me. So, if someone like Dawn wanted to do a podcast, I would be all for it, but I'm not gonna do one on my own. Love you guys, but not that much. But yes, you are completely right, Mags, that Gimli was actually a good person. Feanor was Galadriel's weird half-uncle, and she hated him. Yeah, geeky podcasts are nice, I will admit. I'd love to guest on a bunch of podcasts. Someone give my info to like all of your favorite Lord of the Rings podcasters. Tell them to hit me up. I love chatting with other people on podcasts. I've done it, I think, 3 or 4 times now. Super fun. But let's continue, or we are never going to finish this thing. There's not too much left, but let's get through it. Alright. So Fingon and Turgon were unwilling to give up any task that they had set themselves on. So the main host held on, and swiftly the evil that was foretold began its work. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Let's continue. The Noldor came at last far into the north of Arda, and they saw the first teeth of the ice that floated in the sea. And they knew that they were drawing nigh to the Helcaraxe, for between the land of Aman and that in the north curved eastward, and the westward shores of Endor, which is Middle-earth, that bore westward, there was a narrow strait, through which the chill waters of the encircling sea and the waves of Belegaer flowed together. And there were vast fogs and mists of deathly cold, and the sea streams were filled with clashing hills of ice and the grinding of ice deep sunken. Such was the Helcaraxe, and there none yet had dared to tread save the Valar only and Ungoliant. Therefore Feanor halted, and the Noldor debated what course they should now take. But they began to suffer anguish from the cold, and the clinging mists through which no gleam of star could pierce. And many repented of the road and began to murmur, especially those that followed Fingolfin, cursing Feanor, and naming him as the cause of all the woes of the Eldar. But Feanor, knowing all that was said, took counsel with his sons, and 2 courses only they saw to escape from Ahriman and come into Endor, by the straits or by ship. But the Helcaraxe they deemed impassable, whereas the ships were too few. Many had been lost upon their long journey, and there remained now not enough to bear across all the great host together. Yet none were willing to abide upon the western coast, while others were ferried first. Already the fear of treachery was awake among the Noldor. Therefore it came into the hearts of Feanor and his sons to seize all the ships and depart suddenly, for they had retained the mastery of the fleet since the battle of the Haven, and it was manned only by those who had fought there and were bound to Feanor. And as though it came at his call, there sprang up a wind from the northwest, and Feanor slipped away secretly with all whom he deemed true to him, and went aboard, and put out to sea, and left Fingolfin in Ahriman. And since the sea was there narrow, steering east and somewhat south, he passed over without loss, and first of all the Noldor set foot once more upon the shores of Middle-earth. And the landing of Feanor was at the mouth of the firth, which was called Drengist, and ran into Doromin. But when they were landed, Maedhros, the eldest of his sons, and on a time the friend of Fingon ere Morgoth's lies came between, spoke to Feanor, saying,
Now what ships and rowers will ye spare to return? And whom shall they bear hither first? Fingon the Valiant?
Then Feanor laughed as one fey, and he cried,
None and none. What I have left behind I count now no loss. Needless baggage on the road it has proved. Let those that cursed my name curse me still, and whine their way back to the cages of the Valar. Let the ships burn.
Then Maedhros so in Alright, so there it is again. And I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see more detail. So you can see just the host of Fingolfin traversing the grinding ice. And I think even this drawing is tame. Because if anyone has watched any, like specials on the Discovery Channel or what have you, you know that there are deep crevasses in glaciers. And that, crossing these deep chasms is super dangerous. And you know that they did that. They had to. So I think that there wouldn't just be a few spikes out here. There would be like these deep crevices that they would have to find a way either to go around or a way to construct something to get themselves over. And probably several fall into the cracks and perish. There's also a note, it's obviously not here in this chapter, but there's a note that many are lost in the water and get stuck under the ice, and they drown because they can't find any openings. And the desperation of that. So, it's not a good time. It's not a good time for the Noldor, but our next chapter will be Chapter 10 of the Sindar. We will be covering chapters 10, 11, and 12 next week. Because chapter 10 is a medium length, but 11 and 12 are both pretty short. So, there's Maglor. Spoiler alert. Alright, switching back. So there you have it, my friends. There is Chapter 9 of the Silmarillion. If there are any questions, please toss them into chat. I will happily answer them now. Ah, my shirt. This is my Thranddaddy shirt. This one is not yet available, but it's going to be on my online store on my website when my website goes live. So, preview, if you guys want to see. I have Thranddaddy shirts. I also have... Ada? Go ahead, Oni. Nana? Go ahead, Oni. Which is, Daddy? Sorry. Daddy? Sorry. Daddy? Sorry. Or Mommy. Sorry. So I've made Daddy Sorry and Mommy Sorry shirts as well. Those will be on my website when it goes live. And also, I can share this with you guys. I just got the stickers in for my essential oil blends, so let me give you a preview of those. So this will be fun. Hold on a sec. There we go. I made up the first batch of these late last night, which is why I didn't sleep well. But you know me. I'm a night owl. I tend to do everything, in the late night. Alright, so. I'll switch my view again so you guys can actually see this, because it's not going to show up properly on this view. Okay, so I need to find the right one. There's an order to these. And they're all out of order at the moment. Alright, so we'll start at the beginning. We'll start at the very beginning. So, these are my essential oil blends. And this one is Hobbiton. So, I got my stickers in. Don't they look nice? I'm so happy with them. So, yeah. Elf Boy blends. My website is, don't know if you guys can actually see that. It is www.elfboy.com. So elf-boi.com. Because I'm your resident elf boy here on TikTok. So yeah, I got these really nice holographic stickers for the various blends. I'm very, very happy with them. And detail that no one really cares about but me. The design here has 2 W's because all of my social media is Wizardway Kris. And then the characters, there's a K here, or a C/K. And it's just the K sound in Elvish. The R character is inside the leaf here, and then IS are here on the other side. So, I'm a geek, and this is a logo that harkens back to Wizardway Kris. So these are all essential oil roll-ons. They're pre-diluted to 10%. I know, I'm super happy with them. Aren't they pretty? So I designed these from scratch. This is all me. But we have Hobbiton, we have Rivendell, Sparkly, Rivendell, these colors. I did gradient bottles, so every single bottle has 2 tones. So Rivendell, we've got Moria, I have to do a photo shoot with these later today. And I will show you guys over on TikTok if you're following on TikTok. I appreciate you guys. So here's Lothlorien. I wanted to have a sticker design that allowed you to see the gradient bottle. I didn't want it to be completely covered from one end to the other. So that's why I went with circular stickers instead. Edoras, this is one of my favorite bottles. It's the red to yellow shift. It's so pretty. I like bright colors. If you couldn't tell from like my entire layout here on Twitch. So there's Edoras. We have Isengard. Minas Tirith. Which I had to give it the blue to clear gradient. It made too much sense with like all of the colors that you see in the heraldry and the stars and the tree and all that jazz. So it made too much sense not to. Hi, Gray. Here's Mount Doom. Doom, 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 doom. Doom, 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 the end. Another really pretty bottle. And this one has a more golden hue to it because the blend itself is actually very golden. Same with Edoras. We have Grey Havens. My personal favorite of the blends. I really love the way this one turned out. So, yellow to light blue shift. And then, drumroll please, this doesn't have a special bottle, but this is one I haven't shown anybody yet. This is a different blend that basically, when you buy an entire set, if you decide to buy an entire set, you will get this for free. So this is not a set exclusive, but the intent was for it to be not one that everybody gets. So at least for the initial release, this will be a set-only edition. So, Paths of the Dead. And this one happens to be in a purple bottle, but my other bottles tend to be blue. So it'll probably be a blue bottle, not a purple one. But Paths of the Dead. So I'll show you guys over on TikTok really briefly. Show you a couple samples here. They're going to be backwards, so forgive me. I might need to, let me take off the filter here. How do I do that? Effects. None. There we go. Let me reorganize that. I'm gonna shift back to just chatting on my Twitch stream. That's better. Okay, so for everybody who happens to be over on my TikTok feed, here is what we are talking about. I know it's backwards. I apologize. But it's Elf Boy blends, Hobbiton. They are my Lord of the Rings collection of Middle-earth oils. And the website is elfboy.com. elf-boi.com. It's very symmetrical, which I'm weird about and enjoy. But I'll show you some of my favorite bottles just because they're pretty. So this is the one for Rivendell. It's a purple-orange shift. Edoras I really like. So there's Edoras, and that's a yellow to red. I love these things. The scents that are in them, I have that in my notebook. Excuse me, Gray. Which one are you curious about? I will tell you. I do have a video up on my TikTok channel. If you scroll down, you will notice the gradient bottles. There is a video that has all of the notes, all of the scents that are included in each blend, but I can totally go through them now. I don't mind. And then like Grey Havens, we'll show that one too. This is my personal favorite of the blends. So that's the yellow to blue. Makes me think of sea foam. I love it. And then the additional one that you get if you order a full set is Paths of the Dead. And this one's in a purple bottle, but it'll probably be in a blue bottle. I can't find the purple ones anymore. Not at a fair price, at least. Any with lavender, yes. Rivendell has lavender in it, though it's not the primary scent. Be very upfront about that. Come on, where are you? There we go. Okay. There is lavender in Rivendell. There is lavender in Lothlorien. There is lavender in Minas Tirith. And that is all. So for you, it would be Rivendell, Lothlorien, and Minas Tirith. So, these three. The colors. So that's your colored palette. But when it comes to primary notes, to give you a general feel for the blends, Rivendell, I tried to do a mixture of woodsy smells. So there is black spruce and cypress are both in there, and you smell those a lot up front. Along with blood orange and orange essence. So it's like an orange and orange woody kind of scent. But there is a little bit of cooling peppermint because it is more northern in Middle-earth. So all of the notes for Rivendell, just to give an example, are clary sage, black spruce, cypress, peppermint, lavender, rhododendron, which is a floral. It's a very sweet, subtle floral. Blood orange and orange essence. Orange essence smells like orange juice rather than orange oil. Does that make sense? It's still an oil, but it's extracted from the juice rather than from the rind of the fruit. So Rivendell has... Oh yay, I'm glad! I love my kitties. My kitties are adorable. Gray likes being close when I'm filming. I'm surprised that Alana is just asleep on my bed back there. Like, you can see her. That's her. She's just back there. But yes, Rivendell is one of my favorite scents in the group. For the other ones that happen to have lavender in them, there's Lothlorien. Lothlorien, it's another one that's sort of a woodsy scent, but it's much more floral. It's much more floral because there's jasmine in it. And jasmine is a very, very strong base note floral. So there are only 2 drops of jasmine in an entire undiluted bottle, but it is enough to be very noticeable. So there's jasmine, myrrh, copaiba, which is a kind of wood, howood, which smells closer to wood chippings, if that makes sense. Like, wood chippings have a very specific woodsy scent versus like going into a pine forest, right? So howood has a very woody scent. Same with Buddha wood. And then lavender, bergamot, and yuzu. So bergamot and yuzu are both citruses. Bergamot tends to be more of a green-smelling citrus, and yuzu is a cross between lemon, lime, and grapefruit. It's like grapefruit and lemon had a love child. So I like that sort of bright green citrus to balance out the floral and the wood components. Primarily minty. Yes. Like, where is it? Isengard has a lot of mint in it. Not like a huge amount, but it's much more on that minty herbal spectrum. Because you look at Isengard, Orthanc, and all of the trees that were in the courtyard, right? They were eventually torn down by Sauron, but before that, there were a lot of trees and herbs, and you see Sauron messing with spells and stuff, so I tried to make it like an herbal kind of scent. So the notes in Isengard are chamomile, lemon, marjoram, wintergreen, star anise, peppermint, and sage. So, very herbal. But between the wintergreen and the peppermint, you get a good kick of mint in that one. And the other one that has a lot of mint in it is Paths of the Dead. Paths of the Dead is actually a very simple blend, but I really, really like it. It's peppermint, eucalyptus, lime. It is the whole point behind the Paths of the Dead scent that I created is that it's all cooling oils. So when you put this on, it will cool your skin. It's supposed to send chill down your spine. That was the feel I was going for. So I chose peppermint, eucalyptus, and lime. All 3 of those do that. They have certain menthol components in the oils that make them feel like they cool off your skin. Unless you over-apply it, and then you feel kind of hot and uncomfortable. But great for circulation, great for headaches. Yes, the Mordor blend, the Mount Doom blend. Okay, so Mount Doom I struggled with because Moria I made very, like, earthy and dense. Moria, I brought out all the pepper notes. I actually have Szechuan pepper essential oil in the Moria blend. So I didn't want to do something that was spicy because I already had that profile. So what I did instead was for Mount Doom. Come on, focus, camera, focus. It doesn't want to. There it goes. So for Mount Doom, which is this color, it's orange and pink, I did what I thought would be all things alluring, like the ring wants to get back to Mordor, right? So there's like this siren call kind of element. So what I put into Mount Doom is Palo Santo, cinnamon, Davana, which is kind of a spicy, earthy scent. Cardamom, Peru balsam, which is a green stand-in for vanilla, and tangerine. So it's like a tangerine spice cake, for lack of a better descriptor. It's like having a tangerine treacle tart. Ah, wanty. So that's the feel that I went for there. It's really nice. Like, how do I describe this scent? It's like a dessert almost. Yeah, tangerine spice cake, man. I like mixing citruses into things because there's such a top note that citrus will be bright when you first put the scent on, but it fades relatively quickly. So for a scent like Mount Doom, you'll get that tangerine a lot up front, so it'll have that bright sweetness. It tricks you. And then as the tangerine starts to evaporate, starts to dissipate from the scent, you're left with all of those deeper spicy notes. So as it fades on your skin, it'll go from smelling really sweet to being darker and spicier. Which I feel is like the best metaphor for Mordor ever. So I put a lot of thought into these. I put an obscene amount of thought into these. It's a good scent though. When my sister tested things out, she was just like, you know, I came for Hobbiton and I stayed for Mount Doom. Because where Isengard is like a medicinal kind of herbal, Hobbiton is like fresh herbal. The Shire, or Hobbiton, my Hobbiton blend, which is pink to white, for like spring flowers, you know. And because I didn't have any vials that were green. So the Shire blend is turmeric fresh tech, so it's a very green smell. Basil, melissa, rosemary, neroli, which is orange blossom, grapefruit, and lime. It smells like a garden. In the best of ways. It smells like an herb garden, and like the citrus trees. It's all things green and growing. Good tilled earth, right? So that one is a green herbal versus Isengard, which is a more medicinal herbal. We need all the recruits we can get. Spice cake. Who doesn't love a good spice cake, though? Seriously. This stuff is good. Hey, Forest Joy Queer Person. Love the username. Very descriptive. Welcome. I'm mostly on Twitch at the moment, but if you have any Lord of the Rings based questions, please feel free to ask. Happy to answer things. Another one that might sound a bit strange for a combination, but I actually really, really like, is Minas Tirith. So Minas Tirith, the blend, is the largest components are Fregonia and bergamot. Fregonia is like tea tree oil, but it's like a more fruity version of tea tree. Hi, Gray. Are you coming over? Hi, sweet boy. It's my big boy.
What you doing?
Jumping down.
Are you gonna go eat?
Chonk. He's such a chonk. I love him. So it's Fregonia and bergamot. So bergamot is like a green citrus, and then Fregonia is like a fruity tea tree. So there's like a nice balance between the two of those. And then it's frankincense, juniper, lavender, and rosemary. a little bit of medicinal. I was thinking like halls of healing, so there's like a little bit of medicinal, but also the way that Denethor rules as steward of Gondor. Minas Tirith would be like it's supposed to have these beautiful white walls, and it's supposed to be like this beacon of strength and power and hope, but it's all a facade. It's like putting on a veneer that the realm is rotting, but up front they try and project this sterilized, pristine state. So that's what I was going for. So there are a lot of like cleansing elements in this blend. So there's a little bit of pomp and circumstance with like the rosemary and the frankincense, but you add in like the juniper and the fregonia, which is like tea tree, and then bergamot, and there's a certain cleansing, sterilized quality to it. A little bit of lavender tucked in there for that hint of the House of Healing, you know? Don't look at the black mold on the walls. Here's our herbal mixture. It's not drugs, we promise. Basically. That's the vibe. That's totally the vibe. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. But my personal favorite is the Grey Havens blend. I love the Grey Havens blend. Because there are a couple things I had never used before, and I got to use them together in the blend, and it turned out so well. So in the Grey Havens, it is lime and kumquat, sea fennel, silver fir, and frankincense. And let me tell you, sea fennel mixed with silver fir is like it's like the woods by the sea. Sea fennel has like an almost salty quality to it. It's so cool. I had never used either of those two before. I had never used my silver fir oil, and I'd never used sea fennel either, and I am in love with sea fennel now. It's such a wonderful scent. So you add that with like that bright keenness of lime and kumquat, and it's just, oh, it's so good. I love that blend so much. If I were wearing a blend every day, it would probably be Grey Havens. But I wanted the Grey Havens blend to have a certain brightness because... Oops. Come on, camera. Work with me. There we go. I wanted the Grey Havens blend to have a certain hopefulness to it. That this is the last, elven stronghold, right? This is where all the elves leave Middle-earth. So there's a certain pristine serenity to the place. But it's also like, this is your gateway to a better place. So I wanted there to be like that seashore kind of vibe to it, but also with some brightness that sort of alludes to the fact that you're going to Valinor from here. That's kind of a big deal. So, as you noticed from all of the blends, they are after specific points along the journey that Frodo takes, starting at Hobbiton and ending at the Grey Havens. Yeah, so that's what I did. I did a thing. But I just got all of the stickers in last night. I got the last bit of the stickers in, and I was so excited that I stopped everything. It was already midnight, and I just put everything aside and made up all of the initial bottles. So today I get to do a photo shoot with all of those, and I get to start making all of the listings for my shop. Fun times. When my shop goes live, basically pre-orders will be available. So you'll be able to order any of the blends that you want. If you order an entire set, you get the Paths of the Dead for free. Later on down the line, I might release Paths of the Dead solo. I haven't quite decided yet. I wanted it to be like a full set exclusive, but it's also a really nice scent, and I don't like denying people access to a great blend. So I'm on the fence about that. But it is meant to be a supplement, a special edition. So hopefully that all makes sense, and everyone's looking forward to that. So I'm super excited. I'm so excited about putting those blends up and everyone getting to see all the hard work I did on the labels. And basically, there wasn't room on the labels because I didn't want to do a full wraparound on the bottle so you could actually see the color gradient of the bottle, and also so you could see your fill level, because I hate it when roll-on vials are completely covered from top to bottom, because you can't tell how much oil you have left. I don't want people to have that sneak up on them like, oh no, I'm out. I want people to be able to reorder more before they are out, if that's what they desire to do. So I wanted to make sure you could actually see the bottle, but also see your fill line. So I did that on purpose. But because of that, I went with a circular sticker, and there was not any room for the components. So the bottles themselves will not have the ingredients listed on them, which is why when you purchase these, you'll get a business card of mine, but on the back of the business card will be all of the components for the blends that you purchased. I'm basically sticking stickers on the back of my business card. So you can keep the card, which will have all of the info from my website and stuff, but it will also have all of the ingredients so that you can refer back to it. Do I have suggestions on where to learn Tengwar? If you're on TikTok, I highly recommend Tengwar Teacher. His name is Jamie, and he's fantastic. He's been writing Tengwar for like 3 decades. The guy's awesome, but he's been writing it forever. I still stumble over a few things, mostly diphthongs. Diphthongs give me so much grief. And that's when you have 2 vowel sounds that are mixed together. So when you have AE, or UI, or OE, EI, all of those are diphthongs. And in each style of writing for Tengwar, the diphthongs are written differently. They change in a way that drives me bonkers, because I can never remember which one is for which style. So mode of Valerian is different than like your typical Tetar Sindarin versus your Tetar Quenya. But if you're looking for something to be written out, if it's something super simple, like you just want to see what your name looks like written out, during my live streams, when I'm doing a calligraphy stream, you can always ask me to just write your name. Happy to do that. And Jamie, if you go over onto his TikTok, which is Tengwar Teacher, he is also always happy to write down your names. I think you can leave him Q&As as well, and he'll eventually get to making a video with your name written out. So, highly recommend Jamie. Send him a comment or a Q&A, and I think he's making his way through his Q&A to write all the pretty names down. So if you're looking for something simple, Jamie can totally do that. I also take commissions. If it's just a simple thing that you want me to write out in Tengwar, it's not going to be very expensive, like $5. It helps pay the bills, though. But if you want me to do an actual translation, I do that as well. I do custom translations. I'm actually, after the stream today, that's the first thing I'm going to be working on, is a translation that someone purchased from me. In their case, this is a translation for Conquer Your Day. Was the one that I was just paid to do. Someone wants me to do... They haven't responded to my initial response to the request, but someone mentioned wanting me to do a quote from Legolas. I wrote it down. Because it was one I'd never been asked to do an actual quote from the books, but translated into Sindarin. Here it is. The quote is, "The passing seasons are but ripples ever repeated in the long, long stream." It's something that Legolas says. in the books. And that's a tough one to translate. So that's the more difficult, the more time consuming it is for me, the more expensive it ends up being. It's just, you're paying for my time, ultimately. But I do the translation, and I give you like full-on translation notes so you understand all the little geeky details of how I got to this translation. And then I write it out in all of the different Elvish scripts for you. I do it in the Tetar mode of Sindarin, I do it in the mode of Valerian, Sindarin, and then for a small extra fee, I will also do it in the Amurthas Dairon, which is the runes, the Kirth, which most people think of as Dwarvish, but the elves actually created that language in Tolkien's world. So the runes are actually Elvish. The dwarves just repurposed them for their own language, but the elves are the ones who created them. So, for an extra fee, if you prefer that script, I will also include that script. So it's great for tattoos, or just, satisfying curiosity, but I do that. For custom translations, please go to my Instagram. Once my website is live, there will be shirts, there will be oils, and there will be a form that you can fill out if you want to do a translation. So you'll be able to do everything all in one place, but for now, while my website is not finished, head over to my Instagram. Same handle everywhere. I'm Wizardway Kris everywhere. So if you want a custom Elvish translation, hit me up on Instagram. Because there you can send me a message without necessarily being, like, we don't have to be mutuals for you to send me messages on Instagram. So I will receive them. And yeah, we can chat about whatever you want me to translate, and based on that, I can quote you how much it'll be based on how much time it'll take me to do. But typically, if you're doing a translation and not just a writing of the script, if you have me do a translation, it'll usually run between 15 and 40. I haven't had any translations run over 40 yet. That Legolas one might come close, because there's a lot more detail to that one. I wouldn't mind doing it for like 35, maybe 40. 40 if they want the extra Kirth on it too. The Sindarin word for farmer. Let's look it up. I'm like, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can figure it out. There we go. Okay. There isn't one for farmer specifically. But you could probably make a... Yeah, you could probably make a compound word to describe that, and it would be something like... I would need to look up the word for worker, but you could combine... There's a word for, like, field / garden / yard, so it's like a broad space, but it's like a cultivated space. And that is sant, S-A-N-T. If you did a compound word with sant and whatever the word is for, like, worker or laborer, or even just person, if you added sant with like elf, you could probably make that into what would be the equivalent of a farmer. That's the thing about Sindarin, is there's so little vocabulary that you have to end up getting creative with things. Yeah, I would combine sant with whatever the other word is. I'd have to look it up. Oh, okay. Looking for anything about your namesake. Quote from Askan. About Aiden. Okay. Many a man of arms misreads patience and quiet. She did much good among us at much cost. Her heart was not faint, and patience will break at last. Ah, great quote. Your name means farmer. Okay, yeah. But if you just wanted to basically come up with an elvish name, you could use sant. You could use sant and any any feminine ending that you wanted to if you identify as female, or masculine ending if you identify more masculine. But that would be like Santor would be masculine. Santiel would be more feminine, or Santwin. Much like Arwen, right? Same concept. Yel, Yen, and Wen tend to be the 3 feminine name endings. And Or and On tend to be 2 masculine ones. Or Ir. So you could be like Santir, Santor, or Santun. And that would basically denote like that individual person as being one of a farm or garden. Yeah, so there you go. Elvish names! This is what I call backwards manufacturing an Elvish name, which is how I made my name, Morduin. Morduin is my Elvish name. Or in Quenya, it's Marlo Morsire, which is way more of a mouthful. But Morduin means Dark River. And that's taken not from Christina, which was my original given name, but from what my parents would have named me if I was a boy. If I'd been a boy, they wanted to name me Doug, or Douglas. So Douglas is someone who dwells by a dark river, and in Quenya, dweller by the dark river is Marlo Morsire. And then if you can't really have dweller by the dark river in Sindarin without it being stupidly long. So I just did Dark River, which is Morduin. So this is the sort of thing that I do. This is what I do with my time. This is what I do on my TikTok. This is what I do on my Instagram when I am commissioned for things. Because I can help people find or make an Elvish name, which usually involves a bit of back and forth because I need to know the name that you want me to either backwards manufacture a name from, like we just did with Farmer, or if you don't end up liking the sound of one of those options, if I'm able to come up with something, then you can just give me elements that you'd like to be part of your name, like a color or an action or something like that, and I can usually come up with something that would be close. And then if I do that and then write it out in the different Elvish scripts and stuff, that is something that you can commission me to do on my Instagram. It's how I pay the bills. And I mean, honestly, I don't get enough commissions to pay the bills, but it helps. It does help. That and merch. I have too much merch, honestly. I've gone a little overboard with the merch. Hello, Robert Vincent. Welcome. As a final act of defiance, Aiden burned herself alive inside the Hall of Broda. Wow. Now, this isn't Tolkien, is it? If it is, like, let me know where you're reading this from, because I don't remember this. It's not ringing a bell for me. Or if it's, because Broda is not typically, it would have to be a mortal name. That's how you want to go out, yeah. In a blaze of glory! Down in a blaze of glory! Do I have a Discord? I don't. Discord makes me want to shoot myself in the head. Discord is so stressful to me. And I think it's just because, like, I have tried several times to be part of other people's Discords, and I get overwhelmed. Instantly, completely overwhelmed. So the thought of trying to manage one myself? No, thank you. I'd be overwhelmed. I would never be there. I would have one, and then, like, people would have to remind me that it exists because I would never interact there. I'm terrible with Discord. It stresses me out. Which is why I'm like, I'll see you on my TikTok or my Instagram. I'm like, please don't make me interact in a chat feature. I do really, really poorly with like, your general chat room / message board setting. Yeah, the notifications are too much for me. Because if I have any significant following, if I get more than 100 people on a Discord, I will never be able to keep up with it. Never. And then I just mute it. And once I mute it, it's like it doesn't exist anymore. I have to, like, willfully remind myself to actually check Discord. It was one of my known failings as a WooTuber, as a Wizards Unite YouTuber, because everyone in Wizards Unite has a Discord server. And so I was part of, like, 7 different Discords. And it was far too much. And some of those Discords had thousands of people in them, and I even when people would just tag me, it was too overwhelming for me. So I'm terrible with Discord. I appreciate it though. Too old for it. I don't feel too old for it. I don't feel too old for TikTok. Do I have a website for merch? Yes. I'm currently constructing my website so that everything is like all in one. So you can get my essential oils, or my t-shirts, or Elvish translations, all of it in the same place. And my Starscape pendants, like everything in the same spot. And that is www.elfboy.com. That's elf-boi.com. So elfboy.com. That's what I'm working on. Right now, if you go there, it'll lead you to an under construction page that I've constructed. And you can join the mailing list. That's all you can really do right now, but I'm trying to get that live in... I was trying to do it by the end of this month. I don't think that's going to happen. I have too much other things to do, because I have to switch all of my t-shirt merch from Teespring, where it currently is, where everything except this particular shirt is currently. I have to take all of that down and then redo all of the listings from scratch through a different vendor, a different print-on-demand vendor, because it has to be something that can be integrated with Shopify. Originally, Teespring was able to be integrated with Shopify, but they decided recently that they want to compete with Shopify, and so they stopped being integrated, which means that my Teespring shop is useless. Which is sad, because I enjoy Teespring, and Teespring, I feel like their prices are really fair, so I don't have to charge you guys an arm and a leg for a t-shirt if I'm going to break even and make like a tiny bit of profit. It's stressful. There are a lot of details. When you're messing with website stuff, there's a lot of details. My kitties have the right idea. She's back there just like... nap time. Sounds great. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, feel free to sign up for the mailing list. I will be doing the occasional blog post, at least reposting like my old podcast stuff with my partner. And we actually cited our sources when we did Tolkien research and stuff, so that could be fun. But yeah, so there will be a little bit of everything over on that website, and once it's live, it's going to be like the one place that you can go for all my shit, which is great. It just takes me a while because I'm doing this literally all by myself, and learning as I go. So it's a challenge, but I'm having fun with it at the same time. I get a great sense of joy and pride when I finish projects like that, because they are so difficult. So thank you in advance for your patience. I appreciate that. And feel free to check out the website. Yeah, www.elf-boi.com. elfboy.com. Let's see, for a visual, I can show you on my labels. It'll be backwards for you guys on TikTok. I apologize. But just so you have a visual of it. Elfboy. Yeah. That's right, Robert, yeah. So, elfboy.com. That's where I'll be. I really should put it on my layout here on Twitch. And I do plan on actually switching from Twitch over to YouTube at some point as well. So, there's a lot of change happening, there's a lot of shifting happening. It'll all settle down eventually. I'm floored that I'm getting close to like 30,000 followers on TikTok. That blows my mind. That is amazing. I was on YouTube for like 2.5, almost 3 years as a WooTuber, and had only managed maybe at my peak like 1,500 followers on YouTube, which is nice, but it's certainly not enough to get any ad revenue. It's not the reason I do it, but paying the bills really helps. It helps me not be so stressed, so I can actually enjoy making my content, instead of feeling like the strange push to make content. I just like being able to make it for the sake of it. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I watch way too much shit on YouTube. I waste my time on YouTube and TikTok. I'm not the best at keeping multiple things going at the same time, if that makes sense. So typically, I'm either focusing on YouTube, or I'm focusing on TikTok, or I'm focusing on Instagram. TikTok has been at the forefront for a long time, and I'm trying to get to the point where I can take the content that I'm making on TikTok and post it over on YouTube as YouTube Shorts as well. I should be able to post it in both places and enjoy both. I'm just, my brain is getting to the point where I have to diversify a bit. Yeah, TikTok is tough because it totally is a time sink. Absolutely. That whole endless scroll thing is dangerous. I'm totally guilty of it. I think my parents are trying to call me because stuff is happening on my phone right now. So I think I'm gonna have to call it quits. It has been a 3-hour stream, which is much longer than typical, so thank you guys for chilling out with me for so long. But more Silmarillion will be next Saturday. We always do Silmarillion Saturdays. If there is a change to that, I will let you know. Next Saturday may or may not happen. I'll let you know that now, because my Thursday is the day that my partner passed away 2 years ago. I'm gonna be an emotional wreck. So even if I don't do Silmarillion Saturday, that will be why. You just got here and it's over. I'm sorry, Delta, I'm sorry. I love you, Aurora, I'm sorry. But if I don't do Silmarillion Saturday next weekend, that would be why. It's too close to my partner's death, and I might be an emotional wreck. If I do a stream at all, it will be something super low-key, like playing the Lord of the Rings PlayStation games for fun. So if I do a stream, that will probably be it. That or an ASMR Elvish calligraphy stream. So it'll be something super chill that doesn't take a lot of my brain meat, because I won't have a lot of brain meat to devote to anything. Yeah, so I'm just trying to keep it so I'm not just sobbing on stream in front of everybody, because, like, I don't mind that, but it's not the most entertaining thing. I'm not here to make you feel bad for me, right? But I appreciate all you guys. Thanks for sticking with me for so long. I love you. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, this next week is gonna be rough for me, but I'm overall okay. I don't want people to worry about me. Like, I'm not suicidal. There's nothing like that happening for me, so everything's okay. I don't bury my grief at all. So when it comes up, I deal with it as it comes. So it's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. I don't pretend that it doesn't exist, because it totally does. But some days are fine, like today, perfectly fine. So far at least. Tomorrow, who knows? Oh, thank you, Alchemist. Greetings. I'm just about to end my lives, but thank you. I will see you guys next week for Silmarillion Saturday. If not, there will probably be some sort of gaming stream or a calligraphy stream. So, I love fantasy too. I actually just finished the Golden Compass, my first read through of the Golden Compass. So I'm on to the Subtle Knife. I'm trying to read through his Dark Materials, not his Mortal Instruments. His Dark Materials. Trying to read through those 3 books. I also just got Ziran Zhejiao's Iron Widow, which I'm really looking forward to. I started that the other night, and it's fantastic so far. That's like a science fiction retelling of Chinese history. It's about Wu Zetian, who is the only Chinese emperor who is female. The only female Chinese emperor in Chinese history. So it's a science fiction retelling. It's like Handmaid's Tale meets Pacific Rim. That's what it says on the cover. And it's like science fiction with mecha and furries and a bisexual polyamorous relationship, but it's young adult fiction. So I'm like, sign me up. Take my money. So I just got that recently, very much enjoying it so far. Highly recommend. But I'm gonna take some time, make sure that my parents aren't, perishing somewhere. So everyone, please take care. I will talk to you guys next week. I love you so much, and take care, guys. Bye!